Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I am thrilled to welcome back someone who's been a journalist, book editor, podcaster. He's the nonfiction editor for Judith Magazine, and he's also the author of Found and Lost, the Jake Cait Story, which by the time this is posted will be out. Please help me welcome Howard Lovy. Howard, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on again, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
Well, we have a lot to cover, but the last time you were here, you were about to embark on a role in Judith Magazine, which I see has now come to fruition. So for those who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about what Judith Magazine is, its purpose, and what your role is?
Sure, yeah. Well, it was launched by Alyssa Wald, who most of us know is also the founder of the Never Alone Book Club,
Right.
which has attracted a real who's who of Jewish members, Jewish literary members. And so both of us saw this trend of and have written about this trend of Jews being blacklisted in the
Yeah, we can
literary
definitely touch
world.
upon that again. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, ever since October 7. So we wanted to give a friendly place for Jewish authors, Jewish writers, Jewish thinkers to have a place where they could submit their fiction, their poetry, their essays, and not feel like they have to explain themselves. You know, we all get it, we all understand. And it just took off from there, and I'm really happy with it. She asked me to become the nonfiction editor, and I'm getting just these top quality essays to pick and choose from. Very happy with it.
So the response has been good. You're still getting a lot of things?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And lately, I think we've also been. Well, no, that's something separate. Uh, there's also a partnership going on with the Jewish Book Council, but that's more for the book club than with Judith Magazine. And this has got so many things going on. But I'm happy to be a part of it.
Well, before we move on from Judith, so how can people submit to you if, and the magazine in general, I guess, if they want to go ahead and do that? Because you just strictly handle nonfiction, right?
Yeah, I just strictly handle nonfiction, and anybody can write to me, and I don't know, am I not supposed to give my email address? But that's fine. It's Howard at howardlovy.com, Lovy, and I take pitches. I take my only criteria is it has to be a true story, and between 1,000 and 4,000 words.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, you touched upon, all right, so this is going to be my next question, which you already touched upon a little bit. You know, last time you were here, you and I spoke about where Jews stand in publishing in general. So I'm not sure how much you want to talk about this. You have a book coming out now, but but since last we spoke, what are your thoughts about in regard to how the publishing world treats Jews now? Do you feel it's gotten better, worse, stagnant? So I'm just curious your thoughts now.
I think I don't know if it's gotten worse, but it certainly hasn't gotten better. I should say that my publisher, Vine Leaves Press, is very much the exception to this rule. They're a small press, and they give voice to Jewish and Israeli voices, and I have nothing but wonderful things to say about them. However, that's not industry wide. I think
Mhm.
there is it's kind of like the self-perpetuating perception that people don't want to hear from Jews right now. And whether I can't go and call the entire publishing industry anti-Semitic. However, they're very bottom line oriented, like any business. And so when it's perceived to be bad business to platform pro-Zionist Jews, then they're not going to get a platform. So what we're trying to do, and I spoke with the Jewish Book Council at a recent writers meeting in Los Angeles. They're trying to show that it is good business to platform Jews, and we're wonderful readers, we're wonderful writers, we buy books, and so they're trying to counterbalance that. It's an uphill battle right now, though.
Yeah, I
We're
agree.
something like 0.2% of the population, and despite what you may hear, we don't actually control the media. So,
I like to tell people I do, but yeah, but I
well,
would
you
admit,
do. You're
yeah,
the exception. Yes.
no, but like I said, if then if Jews control the media, the narrative would have been a lot better than what it is.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I agree with you 100%. I mean, it, it it does feel like it. It feels like a lot of times like the walls are closing in on you, and it feels like there is no platform. That's one of the things that I do admire with the Never Alone Book Club and what you're doing with Judith, because it does give a platform to something. Because it does feel like you're very much alone at times. And speaking of which, I saw that you were at a couple of writing conferences. We'll go one at a time. One of which was the AWP, the Association of Writers and Writing Programs. So, what were your experiences there? Because I saw you write about it, I saw your post, but there have been a lot of incidents that I've seen about hostility to Jews in the past. So, can you just
Yeah.
talk about a little bit your experiences on this recent one?
Sure. Yeah, well, at AWP, I heard so much about what happened last year, which was a
Hmm.
disaster for Jewish authors, and other people have written eloquently about that. So I kind of used my book launch as an excuse to go, but also to participate in a panel on, with other Jewish authors on what life is like, as a Jewish author.
Hmm.
Um, I have to say that, there's so much to it, but my experience was very, very positive. There were some isolated incidents, but I think this year, they were prepared. And I have to give all the credit to the Jewish Book Council for meeting with the AWP organizers and allowing for, extra security at Jewish events, making it clear that outbursts won't be tolerated. There still were some, and I know a lot of Jews still felt a little bit marginalized. But I think that our event and a couple other events, which were originally rejected, um, came through, and I felt like a real part of the Jewish writing community. Um, and what I told younger authors especially is that it's too late for me. Just Google me, and I'm almost 60 years old, and people know exactly where I stand. But I so I'm not trying to impress anybody at my age, but I feel badly for
Hmm.
younger Jewish authors who are just starting out and want to make an impact in the mainstream literary world.
So overall, you felt that they handled this well this year. They handled it much better. That with regard to,
Yeah,
I mean, I saw that you wrote that there was a protester there that got taken out, who was trying disrupt your panel as well, right?
right. Yeah, he was trying to disrupt our panel. And they were prepared for it. There was security outside, a couple of the seminars that I went to in our event, and I felt protected. I would eye the door to see what was going on,
Hmm.
but I felt safe, and this was definitely not a repeat of last year. It doesn't solve the problem. It
Right.
just means that these organizers handled it a little bit better. The problem of the marginalization of Jewish voices is still there, but it wasn't an anti-Jewish free-for-all like last year.
Okay, one of the things I did want to touch upon, if you don't want to talk about this, I'll edit this out later. But I
Okay.
saw ahead of time that you attended a panel with beforehand of anti-Zionist Jews, and I find myself, I get aggravated with Jews on many issues politically, if they, but I try to keep it inside because I think it's at this, especially this particular time, because it's not helpful to have Jews going against other Jews. With that said, I don't apply that to the anti-Zionist Jews because I think it's just they're so harmful to Jews as a community. The as a Jews, the not in my name Jews. Those are
Yeah.
the ones I have zero patience for. So you went to attend the panel. So I was just curious how you dealt with that.
Well, I tried to sort of take it in small doses. All you have to do is go there for 5 minutes, and I see what they're all about. Um, and that's fine. Like they say, three Jews, four opinions. Everybody has their opinion on world issues and the role of Jewry and all that, and that's fine. The problem I have is that. they represent such a tiny
Hmm.
percentage of Jewish opinion,
Agreed.
but they're the ones that are getting platformed in the media.
Yes.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Why? Yeah. It's always like, why can't you be more like these Jews?
right, right, yeah. So it's it's cover. See, some of my best friends are Jews,
right.
and
My
they are
my
anti-Zionists.
lawyer,
Yeah,
my
right,
accountant, right? Yes, exactly.
right.
So, as long as we're okay, as long as we're publishing, let's talk about your book, the Jake and Cait
Mhm.
story. Last time you were here, you talked a little about it, that it was coming out, and now we're here. So now I'm excited for you. So, like, can you just talk again about the central plot of the book? So for people who have not don't know.
Sure, yeah. And I should say that, as kind of a segue from Jewish issues, that I wrote this pre-October 7,
Hmm.
and where my mind was in a different place. I gave myself a little break from writing about anti-Semitism and decided to write this story that does involve, a bit about of Judaism and the Jewish character. But um, it's ultimately a very kind of there's tragedy in the book, but it's a very optimistic book, and I don't know if it's something that I would have written after October 7, where I sort of lost my sense of humor.
I
um,
get it. Yeah.
but basically, it's an examination of faith and aging and music and time. I've always been fascinated by stories that take place over time, where you see a character as a young person and then see them again as an old person and see what they're like and what life has done to them or has done with them. So Jake and Cait are two musicians who meet when they're teenagers, um, who form a bond and develop a kind of a little cult following over the course of 6 months. They part their ways and don't speak again for another 40 years.
Hmm.
They each go on with their lives, and why and how that happens is kind of central to the book, so no spoilers.
No spoilers. Right.
Um, they One of the songs accidentally in 2025 accidentally goes viral. So suddenly, everybody wants to know who these people are and who recorded these great songs, and so they drag these two people out of retirement, you know, and say, "Okay, go ahead, play for us." And obviously, they're both in middle age. They have life baggage, and how they feel about each other has evolved and changed over the years. So it's uh, a study of time. It's a study of faith also. Jake is a Jew and Cait is a devout Christian, and so there's some interfaith issues there too. And part of it is they're such completely different people, religiously, temperamentally, culturally. Um, but when they get together to play music, it's something just extraordinary. Apart they uh, they're just average, but together they just kind of move the world. So that's basically the plot.
It sounds fantastic to me. You said about that your mindset since you don't know if you have the humor for it now after, but I think it's more needed than ever right now. Some escapism also,
Absolutely, yeah,
especially for
yeah.
Jewish audiences right now. I just curious, was there like any inspiration behind the story? Anything that that led you to writing this?
Well, the skeleton of the story is based on when I was 18 or 19 years old. I was a camp counselor at Interlochen Arts Camp, which is up here in northern Michigan, and I had some similar experiences as the character in the story. But I took a kernel of truth, a kernel of being in the musical environment and some of the relationships you form, and went off in a completely different direction. So it's a made up story, but it's based on many things that I experienced in real life.
Little kernels
Not
of truth thrown in.
little kernels of truth, and also as somebody who was once a teenager and is now a middle-aged man, I can speak to how time has treated me. So
Well, I
yeah.
also saw that you got one of those really cool orange banners on Amazon for being number one in a category. How rewarding is that?
It was great. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what algorithm, made this happen, but the book isn't even out yet, and it's already number one in new Jewish American fiction. Um, if you read it, you wouldn't really see it as a Jewish book, although it's an important element in it. I'm a Jewish author,
Mhm.
obviously, so it's been categorized as Jewish American fiction, and I'm happy with that. Kind of my different worlds are colliding, and just purely on, I don't know, word of mouth, maybe the fact that I'm posting about it 80 times a day, as all my social media followers know. Somehow, it's resonating with pre-orders. So we'll see what happens on April 29 when it's
That's it.
officially out.
I look forward to it. I look forward to reading the book a lot. I enjoy your writing, so I'm curious to see how the book is. I'm really looking forward. So
Thank
I
you.
wanted to ask you about a couple of other things there too. I told you before, I follow you on Twitter. X, whatever it is now. So we discussed the first time that you were here. I thought that there are several accounts that if you're Jewish, I recommend that you follow. Yours is one of them. So, and I try to follow some coming from many different viewpoints as well, so I can just get an overall thing. So you post a lot of Jewish issues. Without regard to the content or political viewpoint, I'm curious as to how often you get trolled by Jew haters right now. And because you do post a lot. And I know whenever I post like anything, it doesn't matter whether it's about Israel or not. It's just as long as there's Jew in there, I'll get someone that makes comments.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That happens all the time. I've got quite an extensive block list, but it doesn't matter. Maybe they're bots, maybe they're people looking for keywords. But yeah, it's when we're recording this, it's almost Passover, so you would post about Passover recipes. What's your favorite way to eat matzah? I did that, and I get hate from that.
Yeah.
From starting this little internal Jewish conversation about how do you put do you smear cream cheese on your matzah? We
I'll
get
be
Jew
asking
hate
about Passover in a minute. Yes.
for that, you know. But I'm trolled by all sides. I also happen to be, and maybe this will anger some of your listeners, but I'm also an anti-Trump Jew, so I
Mhm.
get trolled by Jews too, who tell me in no uncertain words, and sometimes that's even worse than the anti-Semites, because I'm called things like capo,
Mhm.
which as the descendant of a Holocaust or an Auschwitz survivor, I take that very personally.
Right.
It's one thing if a Jew hater says he hates Jews, fine, whatever, I expect that. But coming from my fellow Jews, it stings a little more. But I chose to kind of be out there on social media, so that's what happens. I'm emphasizing X a little less right now because I think since Trump's election, it's becoming less and less of a place for discussion and community. So I'm focusing more on my Substack, frankly.
It's funny. I see people saying that. I always feel the opposite, that it's like I see Jewish content more now, and when I didn't before. And my algorithms are such anyway that I guess that I don't see any writing thing. I always see Jewish posts and Israel posts there, I guess, because that's what I interact with the most. But I do see, I feel like there is a vibrant Jewish community there, supporting each other, which I do love. Yeah, I see the trolls too, but I also see a lot of Jewish creators or Jewish content, people supporting each other, which I have liked a lot. Um,
Maybe my algorithm is just conflict, conflict,
right.
conflict. So maybe I need to
Well,
do
I'll
more
ask.
matzah posts.
Well, I'm going to ask you about
Yeah.
that I'm going to ask you about Passover in a second, because in the past couple of weeks, talking about conflict, I've seen you post about Patty Smith, who posted, what can be construed as anti-Semitic comments. You also posted about Roald Dahl, who most definitely was an anti-Semite. And you mentioned your opinion of Smith has gone down. Mine too. When I didn't see that until you posted it, actually. So I'm just curious, are you able to separate the art from the artist? Because this question comes up for
Yeah.
me often, and, especially in the age of social media, I see people who I once respected, like, oh, really? This is how you feel about Jews? So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so it's affected my opinion greatly. So, how do you feel with that? Are you able to separate the two?
That has been a hard question for me for for decades. And Patti Smith, by the way, is even mentioned in my book because it takes place in part in
Oh,
the 80s,
I'm
in
sorry about
the
that.
80s music scene. But anyway, there's a story I tell about my father. You know, my father loves opera. Uh, and so growing up, he would always listen to Wagner. And
Mhm.
we all know Wagner is a
Yeah,
notorious
right.
anti-Semite. So one day I asked him, you know, how can you listen to Wagner when you know that he was an anti-Semite? And he
Right.
says, yeah, that makes it even better because I'm saying, F you, Wagner. I'm a Jew
And
and I'm
listening.
listening to your music and enjoying it. You know, so he was able to separate the person from the music. I'm a little bit, you know, I had a conversation with my son the other day. He's really into Green Day,
Oh, I saw that.
and
Yeah,
Billy Joe
right.
Armstrong wrapped himself in a Palestinian flag. I don't honestly, I don't know all the
I
details that
saw
went
that. I
with it.
saw that. Yeah.
So I mentioned it to my son. Well, are you still going to listen to Green Day? And he says, you know, the same thing my father told me is I separate the person from the music.
Hmm.
And part of that is true. If you go into any of your heroes' personal lives, you might find something you don't like. Um, you know, and it doesn't necessarily um, uh, it doesn't diminish their art, but it diminishes them as a person. You know, you can see that I'm kind of two minds about this, so I can't give you a definite
No, I'm
answer.
with you. I'm totally
Yeah,
with you. Know what? I always look at it two ways. With Dahl, for example, too. Um, I grew up reading the books before I knew all this stuff, and so and to me, it's like if I were ever fortunate to not win some award named after Dahl, I would
mhm,
gladly take that because I know how much it would piss him off to have a Jew win that.
right, right.
That's one and two. Like I see people like John Cusack and people posting all this Jew hate and stuff. And to me, it's always like if it's stuff movies that I grew up with, I'll watch it now. New movies that come out, I won't support. So I draw the line there. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I do. That's how I
Yeah,
look at
yeah, yeah. I'm not very consistent in this too.
it.
You know, I try to make myself comfortable. You know, for
Right.
example, Macklemore when he started with all
Oh, yeah.
his
No,
anti-Jewish stuff, I had precisely two Macklemore songs on my Apple playlist. I deleted them. You know, no big loss.
I did as well. The same with me. So you mentioned Passover. So we're recording this prior to Passover. By the time it comes out, it's going to be post Passover. First of all, what are your plans for Passover?
Well, my wife and I are empty nesters, and my kids are away at college, and they're doing their own thing. So it's just my wife and me. Every year since my kids were little, I kind of did this DIY Haggadah.
Oh, we have that. My mother
Don't
did
worry,
that.
it's not the Jewish Voice for Peace Haggadah,
Right.
you know, where we
Yes.
eat pita bread and
Yeah.
watermelon or whatever. But it's something that I tailored for my family. It's all the requisite, you know, sips of wine and all the right foods and everything. But the readings is they're always something that I tailored for the news.
Mhm.
What's happening in the world today, and apply that to the story of the Exodus. So I'm doing that again this year. Although it's just my wife and I talking to each other rather than the whole family. So
Is no one going to
yeah.
come over? None of the kids are coming?
No, they're busy. They're busy with school.
I
So
I have a pretty empty. I have one daughter in Israel now, one in New York, so it's going to be not the same, but
yeah, the local Chabad rabbi invited me for a community Passover,
oh,
which
that's
which,
nice.
which I declined. So yeah,
Oh, really? I love Chabad is so inclusive of everyone there. It's we have one near that
yeah.
I go to, so it's nice. So yeah, by the way, I have to ask now, it's Passover. How do you have your matzah brie?
Have I had my matzah
How
what?
do you have it? How do you eat your matzah
Oh,
brie?
how do I eat? Oh, a
Yes.
base coat, a base coat of butter, whipped cream cheese in the middle, and then
Okay.
a topping of strawberry jam.
That's more like what my kids would like than what
It's perfect.
I just
Yeah,
put
you
salt
know,
on
that
mine.
way it tastes kind of like cheesecake, you know. So
So when we come to Jewish holidays, and we've been through several of them since October 7th, I don't know if you're religious at all now, but do you find the holidays like any more meaningful now?
you know, the high holidays and Passover are have always just been the big ones
Hmm.
for my family growing up. Um, Especially Yom Kippur is a little more Yom Kippurish for me. You know,
Yeah.
it's a very somber holiday where you fast and you think about the past year, and it makes me a little conflicted because I've had bad thoughts about evil people and what I
Yeah.
want to happen to them, and it makes you think about who I am as a Jew, and is it good for me to have these very, very negative thoughts?
Hmm.
Um, and October 7 really focused that for me. You know, what kind of a person am I? Do I seek revenge or peace or both? I don't know. I think it's a dilemma maybe we all have.
Yeah, I'm with you. Look, you and I discussed this a little bit last time. October 7th changed me forever. No, no hyperbole. There are things about me that will never be the same again. And also, I see on social media, like you and I just talked about a second, but I see who's posting what. And when I see people that I knew and respected for, years, and now I see what they feel, it's changed. There can no salvaging that relationship for me. We could be cordial, I see you, but there's just no respect anymore on my end. And yeah,
Yeah.
so I get totally what you're saying. Yeah, so let's talk back to you. So you have all this coming out. You're always busy with something. So I see you're very, very busy. What are you working on next?
Well,
We have a lot of book
I
promotion to do. I know that.
I've
Yes.
got a lot of book promotion to do, but I did a Kickstarter a year ago to write a book about anti-Semitism, which we talked about the last time,
Hmm.
and so I did it. I wrote it, and I hated it, and I deleted it. So I'm starting over from scratch. It was,
Really?
I used my journalism skills. I came up as a journalist,
Right.
and I wrote a book that was very much because I interviewed scores and scores of experts. You know, he
Okay.
says this and she says that, and according to so and so, this is, and it was just lifeless. And so I made a decision to change my whole tactic and make it um, more of a memoir. There are various ways
Mhm.
that my family has experienced anti-Semitism. I've personally experienced it. That I can uh, make this sort of my own story. My wife would be rolling her eyes right now, saying it's not all about you, Howard. But I'm going to make this a little bit more about me, not just about me, but my family. For example, we housed Jewish refuseniks or former refuseniks back
Mhm.
in the late 70s. My family did. And I was thinking about that's the last time that Jews of all political stripes really w- were unified.
Mhm.
Liberal Jews, conservative Jews, Orthodox, Reform. We were all together in the Free Soviet Jewry movement. That's not happening right now. And an important part of fighting anti-Semitism is to find unity. And because of the election cycle and world politics today, I think we're a little bit too polarized. So there's some personal stories that I can bring into that and bring it into today. So I'm busy in between all the other stuff, furiously working on that. And I owe an explanation to all my Kickstarter backers too. If you're listening, I'm sorry. I'm working on it. It will come out. So
Oh, I think that's a great way to approach it, just based on your personal experiences with that too. I think the other way is good too. Whatever way you do it, like I'm interested in reading. When you do that, come back and we'll discuss. Like we could talk about that for like ever. So, that again, I want for people who don't follow you, like I said, I do follow your account. I like seeing your content. Um, you're one of the few. There are several people that I do follow religiously, and you're one of them. So, how can people follow you on social media?
you can find me on X, just at Howard Lovy. I'm focusing more of my long form stuff on Substack. So howardlovy.substack Hold
Mhm.
on. Let me see. What the heck is the URL?
Well, if they put your name in the Substack, they'll find you.
howardlovy.substack.com. Because a lot of times you don't get nuance on X. You get characters
Right.
and
Yes.
you say outrageous things to get people to react. But my Substack gives me more room to explain what the heck I'm talking about. And I wanted to get back to long form fiction, I
Mhm.
mean nonfiction, because that's how I came up. I came up as a journalist in the pre-internet, pre-social media age, and I wanted to find uh, that voice again. So yeah, Substack X. If you want to link with me professionally, I'm on LinkedIn. I've been experimenting with Instagram, but my kids tell me I'm not doing it right. So,
I get that note as well on
yeah.
Instagram.
So it's all about the reels. You can't be on the grid
Right.
down below. Everybody ignores that. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I hear a lot of that as well. But Howard, I want to thank first of all again for those listening. It's Found and Lost, the Jake and Cait story. Make sure you go out and get it. Howard's a great writer, and like I said, I look forward to it. But I want to thank you again for coming on.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
Well, again, this has been the Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen. Again, a very special thanks to Howard Lovy, and please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.